great because they have it every weekend.
It's like $50.
Just gonna be 2 videos instead of 1.
50 a year.
Correct. So, you know, the last time we did it, in all honesty, I don't think it was all that utilized. It seemed like more than just the village residents using it. It was landlords and people like that that were putting out stuff that have been building up for years. I think the system now, where the village portion, the town portion of the village that goes to Wappinger, goes there now, and that works pretty good. Next item is A5110.200, which is the equipment item. Last year we asked for $24,000 for this line item. I'm asking again for $24,000 this year. What that does is it's going to pay the payments for the 2012 Ford F-250. That would be the 5th payment out of 7. And it's going to be the 4th payment out of 5 for the 2012 Ford F-550. Again, the same as last year, I've noted under this item that I think that the village should consider buying a new large dump truck at some point in the future. The newest one that we have is 11 years old, and the oldest one we have is 22 years old. Again, that's just by the nature of their age. I think at some point in time the village should consider that. I know it's an expensive purchase, but at the way the ages that they are, in the past 20 years, the village was basically purchasing a new truck every 5 years because they're 10, 15, and 20 years old.
What's the price tag on one of those?
It's $180, but it could probably be less than that because we would take one of the slide-in sanders that we purchased already for the older vehicles and put it in that. But it would give you a dedicated truck that you could have. Right now, in the wintertime, we have no large dump trucks to use because we always have a sander in it. So it would give you that flexibility. It would give you additional leaf vacuum season, additional blacktop paving season. It would allow you to move some snow during the snow season, and it would give you a jump start on the spring, or we're doing brush cleanup and whatever. We'd have a truck that we could use, whereas now we don't have a dump truck to use. I also included on the next page of that, which is 3A, a list of all the equipment that the village DPW currently has, and I've given the useful life as calculated by the New York State Department of Transportation. So I've shown you what equipment we have, how old it is, what the DOT thinks the useful life is, which will give you what the remaining useful life is. And then page 3B and 3C are from Jen Brown. Those are just the payoffs on the existing trucks. Next item would be the contractual item, A5110.410. This is the item that pays pretty much everything for the highway department. The operating expenses. It pays for diesel, gasoline, repairs, parts, concrete, blacktop, stone, pipe, and it also pays for the running of the garage, the heat, the electric, the internet, and the phone. Currently, I got the numbers from Jen Brown, and the year-to-date costs through February that we've spent so far are $96,700. The biggest expense that we have is the parts and repair expense, which is year-to-date is $33,000, which is much less than it was last year. Last year at this point in time, we had $45,000 or $50,000 worth of repairs. So I think that number is coming down a little bit. I broke it down there between the parts and the labor. And last year you allocated $120,000 to this line item, which was down, I think, considerably from the year before, where you allocated $136,000. The allocation from the board for the 2 years previous to that was roughly $128,000, including contingency. So last year's allocation of $120,000 was, again, I think substantially less than the 3 previous years. And I would ask that you consider putting it back to that $136,000 level, because I think that's close to what this item ends up being, realistically. Also under this one, I always speak about the roads and paving of the roads. Last year, under contract one, the village did an awful lot of paving, up to about 9,000 feet, which included new roads completely repaved and roads that were milled and filled. I think that's great, and I think that the board is moving in that direction for contract two and for future contracts. And again, that's a tremendous improvement over what we have. But I would point out again that there are streets that aren't included in those contract items that under contract one or contract two or contract three or a foreseeable contract that I think need attention. Some of them I think need attention immediately. So I think the board should try to consider some way to address those streets that are not going to get addressed under the utility contracts. Those would include Nelson Avenue, Adams Street, Pell's Place, Andrews Place, Pelham Street, and the smaller streets in the first ward, Hillside, down in Church. So some of those streets, are not going to get a utility contract, so they don't have a repavement of their street to look forward to, and there should be some mechanism where those would at least looked at.
Break a water pipe.
Yeah, if we could do that, that's okay.
Something there.
Next page, item A5110.420, which is safety. Last year, we requested $4,500 for this item, and again, this year we'll also request $4,500. This pays for safety equipment, safety training, barricades, warning signs. It pays for all the OSHA stuff that we have to do, including recalibration of equipment that we have. It pays for drug testing, and it will also pay for portions of, I have a highway employee now that is going to get his CDL, and it'll pay for a portion of that. And again, that number is the same request as last year. Next one, A5110.430, which is the staging area. This is the crushing line item, and we had gone back and forth with this item over the past couple of years, and we came to an agreement that we would only crush every 2 years, so the village would save money. But it's now been actually 3 years, and if you go up to the dump and you look in the back, you can see that there's an excess of material that we have to try to get rid of. This is material that when we crush it, we make it into something that's actually usable, and it saves us money, because by the time you're done with the crushing, it costs maybe $8 a ton. If you buy it, it costs you $12 a ton. We used an awful lot of it down where the fill is for the new highway garage, and you can see that the pile that is left is diminished, and that the pile of raw material that we need to crush is getting bigger and bigger and starting to take over the back of the dump.
So none of that can be buried.
They chose not to, again, last year when you were doing that. It's a different thing to try to bury slabs like that, because, especially so deep, it just creates voids. I think what the engineers recommended, and you can check with them last year, is that the contractor not bury stuff like that unless he was to crush it first, and he decided that was too expensive for him to do, so he called it off. So number one, as it is, it's not, unless you process it, it's not necessarily good for fill. And number two, we do use the material that we get from the crushing. So the last time we had done the crushing was in the summer of 2013. The costs at that time were about $32,000. And I've given you a breakdown of what I think it would be this time. Since there's more material, I think it would end up being roughly $36,000. But again, that material is starting to take over the area in the back of the dump, and running low on the actual finished product that we use. Okay, next item, 5142.100, snow removal, personal services, which is the overtime line item. Last year, we requested 25,000, the board adopted 20,000. As a matter of fact, there's a chart there that shows the last 5 years, and it shows what the DPW requested, what the board adopted, and what we actually spent. I know that it's difficult to predict what kind of snow overtime you'll have in any given year. For instance, this year, it hasn't been much so far. I've given you a list on the next page of what it is year to date. It's something like $3,900, which is relatively inexpensive since we're nearing the end of the season. Right, but I averaged the last 5 years that we have actual money spent, and that average works out to $25,000. So I think that that's a good number. That's a number that I requested before. And I think that's a reasonable number to put in there because, for every up year you have a couple of bad years that it's offset by. And I think that's a realistic number for what you should expect. You can't always be as lucky as this year. And again, there's the next sheet after that shows the actual hours to date for this year. Bar chart at the end of that. Next item is A5142.400, which is snow removal expenses. And this is the item that's used to pay for salt, sand, and anytime we have to have snow removal by our contractor. Again, it's hard to estimate what these numbers are going to be. So I took the last 5 years, just as in the previous item, and the average of that was $45,000. And then I broke down what I think next year's request should be in terms of road salt, sand, and the contractor, and I think that $45,000 is a reasonable request, reasonable number. You can see there that in that breakdown of the costs, I used 300 tons for salt and sand, whereas normally I would use 500 tons. And the reason I did that is because I think we're going to have excess material left over from this year's. There's a minute when the village buys its road salt off the New York State OGS contract. So we have to, in April or May, tell the OGS how much salt we want, and then we're required to take a minimum of 70% of that. So this year we purchased our minimum 70%, but I think we're not going to end up using it unless something happens in the next month where we're using an awful lot of it. We should have some left. That's why I reduced the next year's estimate from 500 tons to 300 tons.
How much do you have left?
As of right now, we're getting deliveries of salt because we ran out of salt. The ice storm that was around President's Day. So there's a sheet on the next page that shows that. Right now, before I tack on the salt that's being delivered, we have 9 tons of salt. So we're basically out of salt. But I've had deliveries coming since last week, and we will purchase the minimum 350 tons that we're required to by the OGS, which is also...
Would it be better for us to go out for our own bid before the April?
I thought of that, and other people thought of that. The reason last year, the reason this comes up is because the price, and I wrote you a letter that's included in here, the price of salt went way up last year from $60-something a ton to almost $90 a ton. You don't know when you commit to the OGS New York State what the price is going to be. They just ask you how much you want, and then they go to bid for you. I think that it does not help us to go out and bid on our own because after the bids came back last year very high, Dutchess County decided to test the waters and do just what the mayor is saying here, and they went out to bid on their own saying we can do better than what the OGS did, and they did. So they went out to bid. New York State OGS goes out for millions of tons of salt, which usually the more you go out for, the less it's going to be. So they had a price of almost $90 for us, 89 and change. Dutchess County went out. After they didn't like that, they went out to bid on behalf of the entire county. So again, a huge amount of salt that they were going to purchase, giving them buying power. And I think the difference was, it was less than $1. So it was not substantial. I don't think that it would change what we went out on our own. To be honest with you, I think it would be the other way around, it'd be more expensive if we went out.
Is salt gonna go down just because of the winter we had?
I would hope so. I think it went up last year because of that. I think
Demand.
yeah, I think that, you know, they have taken the fuel surcharge and made it a negative number, you know, so the delivery cost has gone down, and I think the demand, obviously, from this winter has gone way down, and I would hope it goes down next year, but when we agree to it in May, we don't know what it is. We're just agreeing to be included in New York State bid, which every other year has been a great thing because we're included in the state with this huge bid and prices are very low. It's just in years like this that the price ended up being high, then you start questioning whether you want to be part of it. I think it's still the prudent measure to be a part of the state bid system. I don't think you should scrap that, if that's your question.
Well, that's not my question. My question is there an opportunity to see if we can get it cheaper in the spring ahead of time at the end of the winter?
In
And
between
then
when they do
still
that,
be able to go for them if we don't like what we see.
I would have to look at the dates. It would be very tight because I think OGS asks you in April when, if you want to participate, and to what level. So I would have to look at what those dates were to see if you could go out to bid in the meantime. And again, I have little or no reason to believe that we would get any cheaper prices than anyone else. Because, based on the county's experience. And again, they're trying to purchase.
Yeah, but that was pre-winter. Anyway, I think I would.
We can look at the
Look
dates to
into
see.
that, yeah.
It's a very tight thing because they ask you immediately following the winter that's happening, they ask you for your
And then
participation for the next.
Aren't you going to have a big pile of salt?
We are, and that's why I'm saying that's why I reduced it from 500 tons to 300 tons, because I think we're gonna have, again, I don't know what's gonna happen in the next month, but I would think we could have 200 tons that would sit there. And the salt that we purchase is still sitting in the barn, it's still good, and will still be used next year. It's not
So how much do you usually use?
500
And
tons,
then how much do you have now?
0.
And how much are you committed to buy?
350. Right.
Okay.
So whatever that is, you know, then 350 minus what we use in the next month.
And so you're thinking
Be
to buy another
surplus.
300?
I'm thinking to tell them 300, of which I'd have to buy 70%, which is 200. So if I had the whole 350 left,
All right, that's expensive, very good.
do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. I like that.
Do you like that better? It's 70% of that.
So you can buy up to
Correct.
300.
I can actually buy up to
down
120%, so I can buy up to 360,
Okay.
but I can buy it down as low as 210.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
So that's that, and again, the numbers are there. I'll adjust that when we finish getting on our deliveries. And the next one is the G8120.400 line item, which is the sewer line item. The request is for $38,000, which is the same that it was last year. I'm not sure what the board allocated last year because I couldn't find that on the line item.
Your man hours spent on sewer?
What they allocated to this line item, which is more than the man hours, it's contractor repairs and stuff like that. So I'm not sure what they allocated, but the request is for the same amount. It includes overtime for us, includes repairs that have to go on to the pump stations especially, and pumping costs because those pump stations have to get pumped out. I'm hoping that the contractor repair item would go down because we're replacing this year. One of the pump stations has a bigger headache, List Road, which is,
Exactly.
I'm sure Steve can tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I live right next to it, so I know it right now.
And it also pays for the electric for the pump stations, parts for the jetter, and we have a mechanic who comes and services the pump stations each month. And that is the final one. So the final page, page 10, is just a summary of all those numbers that we put together. questions, or if you guys want some more time to look this over?
Yeah, we're gonna dig into it.
Okay. If there's any immediate questions? No?
Do you have, how much sand do you have?
We purchased the same amount as the salt.
And you still have that much left, or more?
Correct. I usually purchase that so that it equals the amount of salt that we're gonna have on here. Right, so we already purchased 350 tons of salt, of sand. And actually 350 tons of salt that we're going to purchase. And that, the sand is much cheaper, obviously. That's something like $15 a ton as opposed to $90.
Okay, I don't have any questions. I'm definitely not leave, but there are questions.
Okay,
Good to go.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks.
They say next.
So, just, so we're recording this meeting.
Don't worry. I'm not asking for much. You guys have what I gave Matt for the lecture?
No.
No.
No. Is it on your desk? Well, just run copies off of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
John?
Hello.
All right.
It's funny how quiet.
Scary. Yeah, nobody wants to say anything.
Is she, oh, Sandra, you wanna talk to us? Oh, okay. Oh,
I'm still working on
There.
that, by the way. I'm still working on that, by the way.
Okay, no problem. I just had written in my book that you were having a meeting tonight, so I'll check it out. Don't know how long it'll stay. Not crazy.
Would you give this to Jason for me, please?
Reach above your head. There we go.
Jay, I don't fill that out anymore
that
since
Jack?
we're not gonna be in your house. You can be the designated contact for the presidential caucus coming up.
Yeah. Scary.
Jason, you can start.
I can't start, I don't have anything in front of me. Well, actually, I can start. I wrote some things down, but I was only increasing the budget $8,040. That's it, but I think the only thing we didn't have was 5 years.
Just one staple. Everybody gets one. Staple.
Everybody gets one stapled and one of the unstapled.
Oh,
Just say $8,000.
$40.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Scott. Okay.
That's the 5-year. Is that not happy? Personnel service line stayed the same. The lease line, that's obviously the same. The equipment line, we added $4,740 to.
That's the special equipment line, 220?
It's, yeah, fire equipment line, it's not special,
So you added
We had
2,007,
2,007,
yeah.
Okay, good.
right line.
Yep.
The Chiefs car that we purchased last year, that's a lease. The mobile radio was a lease, that's paid off, I think that was like 16,000, right, for 4 years. Contractual, I added 4,000, last year it was 20,000, it's 24,000. Fuel line, we added 500, we could always cut that down to whatever you guys want, I don't know what we
You're
use in
coming
fuel.
way under, I think.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if we should cut it that far, because that's something we could cut more.
The fire testing, we added 800, 6,200 to 7,000. Utilities stayed the same. Maintenance for all vehicles stayed the same. Physicals, we kept the same. Turnout gear is a lease, so that money's the same. And the training, we left at 3,000. And the building line, 4,500.
You know why your equipment line is different? You only have.
Well, we gotta buy those bailout bags, and they're $375 a piece. So for 20 of them, it's 7,500 right there.
So you detailed that out to us.
Should be.
Yeah, that's here.
Should be the third one, guys.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
the third page. Okay, I think we can have it there, and then we go over that slide.
What was the number on the per cost per item? The bailout bag?
They're $375 a piece.
And you wanted how many?
I put on this sheet 10. I'm using some restricted money, so I bought 5, but we need 20. And the descenders on them are only good for 10 years, and we got 3 years left on them.
So what's that, 5 for each house?
If I buy 20, it'd be 10 for each house. And other than that, and then I was asking to replace that '09 Tahoe that has 80,000 miles on it. It's got 79.5 to be exact. Being that we have a lease that's up this year for 13,000. I don't think there'd be an increase in the budget if we added it to a lease line. We have the lease line that's up this year for 13,354.46, which is a 210 line. But we asked for 52,000. 20 to get everything swapped over, graphics, and the car's 32, state bid. Other than that, that's all I have.
So this year, that line you just mentioned, you have 22, and you're asking for 24,700?
What line is that?
Are
The equipment line?
you talking about 210?
The 210 is a lease line. It's,
Is that the one you said just expired?
September 1st of this year, it's paid off.
So for 2016-17, that's, okay. That's the last.
Because last
payment
year,
then.
when
This
we
is the
bought
last
our,
payment?
when we bought the car that I'm in, we were able to defer the payment till December. We made a payment of $6,000.
So this 13.54 is the last payment on that lease.
Yeah. And we had one up last year for $16,000. And I don't think that would show an increase. Right?
Yeah, but you still have to make this last payment on the equipment line. The last lease payment is in this budget year.
Yeah, September.
Right.
And if we defer the payment till December, we pay $6,000 on a new car like we did last year, and then 2017, you can make that payment, probably be about the same as what you're paying now, at the $12,686 for a new car. Because the price never went up. And that would be for Mark, who will be car one in 2017.
I'm good. Any questions? Do you have any questions for us? Okay, so the fire committee is gonna talk it to you, and the finance committee, myself, to you, but that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Must be a big one. That's a big one.
That's the last.
Starting off with line 110.
Do you have copies, David?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I have copies.
I think I just sent you.
Yeah. You can see his copies here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Actually, before I begin, I just remembered the personnel line, which is 110. I'd sent the village board an email requesting for tonight's meeting to hire, and I gave a brief summary of his background and his current status as an officer for Ralph D'Aliso. I would like to try and get him hired to have an additional officer for the parade detail. I don't know if I can get addressed tonight.
I think we can, so once you go ahead with the budget here, and then we'll.
So, line item 110. I budgeted 740,915. Currently, we have 19 officers assigned to patrol. 3 of those 19 officers are assigned to the traffic unit. We have 1 sergeant and 2 full-time officers. 1 full-time officer is in his 4th year, and 1 full-time officer is in his 3rd year. The number that I put down for the 110 line is actually a number that reflects the hiring of a new full-time officer. It's my understanding as of yesterday that one of our full-time officers is going to be transferring to another department as a full-time officer. So this number actually reflects the starting salary of the new new full-time officer to take the place of this other full-time officer, assuming that he does leave. But it's my understanding that he is going. Part-time officers, they need to cover 1,404 shifts. And they're included in that, the number of 19 officers. You have myself, the police commissioner, my salary, there's no reflected increase in that. We're gonna be up to the village board. Supervisors, additional supervisors, you have Lieutenant Birdsall and Sergeant Burke. Lieutenant Birdsall and Sergeant Burke are salary capped at $30,000. They can't make more than that. And then you have the detective bureau. We currently have 4 detectives. All of the numbers that are reflected here in the total number 110 does not reflect any kind of salary increases for contract. The number also includes anticipated overtime of $30,000, coverage for vacation, personal time, and sick time that's contractual, and special events, which I estimated to be $7,000. The number is somewhat difficult to estimate for line 110 because there are events that do occur during the year, such as building collapses, which we had to cover, major construction details that required additional police officers to cover, increase in arrests. So the increase in arrests will reflect the salary line as far as usage and also court time, because they have to go to court for increase. If there is an increase in summons activity or arrests. So line 120 is blank, that's the retro for contract. Line 130 is the police assistant. Based on the budget request, and the restrictions for preparing the budget, I am actually down 1 full-time police assistant, and I'm not going to be requesting that police assistant be replaced. So we're working with 2 full-time police assistants, and we currently have 7 part-time police assistants. 1 of those 7 are on a leave of absence until May. We're in the process of hiring an additional, so that will give us 8. But I do think we should hire 2 more part-time to help cover. The number for line item 130, you're going to notice is a lot less than previous budget lines. I'm hoping that the number for last year was higher because during the time that we were trying to hire additional part-time personnel, I believe 3 or 4 of the part-time police assistants that we hired didn't work out. So they varied in the amount of hours that they worked. The current training program is between 80, it could go as high as 90 depending if they need additional time to get the training down. For the most part, it's 80 hours, and probably during those 80 hours of training, we lost 3 or 4 part-time dispatchers. They weren't able to complete the program. So I'm hopeful that any new additional hires for at least the first 40 hours, in my opinion, they're not considered actual hires until they finish the actual training program. So I'm hoping for at least the first 40 hours to see, how well they are on their way, that we don't pay them. That they come in, they want the job, they come in. I know Sorbies has a similar program for its police officers. They volunteer the time of the win. I'm not in favor of it for police officers, but for dispatchers who are going to be inside, I think it might be a worthwhile way of looking to keep the number down by having them volunteer at least the first 40 hours. Another thing to consider with, if the village board decides that it may be more beneficial to hire the 3rd full-timer and keep the part-time staff down, The biggest difference for full-time and part-time is the benefits, which I don't know what that number is for dispatchers. But up until the 5th year of service, it doesn't reach, it reaches $1.50 difference in salary between a full-timer and a part-time at the 5th year of service. So from the time of hire up to the 5th year, it's less than $1, goes up to $1, and then reaches $1.50. So, to me, it would be more worthwhile to hire another full-timer, just for stability. But I don't know what the cost is for the benefits for full-time dispatching staff, so it just might be something to consider. Stop DWI for 140, that's gonna vary. I put in for it $3,691, but it's based on a grant, which is based on the amount of funding that the county gives us. Court, line item 150, I have it at 15,000, a slight increase. Again, that's a number that's going to vary due to summons activity, it's going to vary due to arrest activity, it's court security. Police training is 9,000. We've increased different areas of training for officers. One of the biggest areas that we increased is first responder status. All of the officers are trained in AED usage, tourniquet usage now. They're required to carry a certain level of protection for dealing with the public. So we had to increase the training for those different things. Police aggressive driving 10 is a grant. I have it down as $598. 180 is blank. That's the civilian patrol officer. 190, I requested $750. Again, it's based on a grant at seatbelt. Bike patrol, I decreased to 500. We just, basically because of manpower, we just did not have the opportunity to use the bike patrol as much as I would have liked to. But it is utilized during the parade detail. Anti-crime, I left blank. I'm not going to fund it. Traffic enforcement, I increased from last year to $75,000.
Did you include as the traffic ticket, traffic enforcement is the undercover black car? Did you include that salary in the
No,
one-time
that's a
line?
separate salary,
That's
separate. That's 193.
Court. Are you manning a person in the court?
Yes.
He didn't put it on his budget.
Yeah, you did. Requested.
I requested that, but I think it's going to come out somewhere anyway. No matter where it comes from, it's going to come out of the budget. So, but I don't know. Line item 200, police equipment. That includes the number includes the GPS in the cars and our current leases that we have. I believe we have 2 leases, and one of those leases, I believe, only has 1 payment left. I can check my file. But this number, 65,000, includes a new car that I'm requesting for patrol. I believe I previously sent this to the village board. This is just a breakdown of current cars with the mileage, the year.
Would you have in here the total cost of the car and the request?
In 200, you should have the GPS payments. I believe that was a $200-something payment. I believe I have the files in the back. I believe we have 2 leases left, and then I'm requesting the price of a new car, but that's the total amount for a new car. It's not broken down into the lease amount.
So you just took that in total and
Cost of
added
the car.
it to the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if the lease amount. Line item 400,
Can I, sorry,
Yep.
and did you include the equipment that goes on the cart?
yes,
So you think you can get a cart for 45,000
yes,
with the equipment?
yes.
Okay.
Line item, line item 400 is our contractual line. You should see a decrease in that also from the, no, I'm sorry, 72,000, I'm asking for, 72,537. What I am asking for, which may reflect the total in that 72,000, is one more body camera as a backup camera, and which we've been getting a lot of positive feedback from the community. It appeared in the local press, and there was a lot of positive feedback on it. And we are at a point now where two of our servers, I'm not sure the technical term, but it's basically at a critical administrative level where, due to the age of the two current servers, if they fail, we'll definitely have problems. We'll be out of, for probably at least a week if they were to fail. And one of the servers includes our Police Pro software, which is where we do our reports and doing name searches and things like that. Software, our network authentication, security, and department data shares. The second server, that server actually requires to be rebooted every other day to avoid network connection loss, which should not be happening. Second server houses our radio transmissions and phone call recordings. It's our main antivirus protection software and management console, and we have our camera system, our body camera system hooked up to that. But this is the report from our IT. Anthony.
Does it have dollars on it?
Yes.
And I can't read this, it's too small. Can you tell me how much that is?
Let's see, to purchase the two servers will be $12,000. It's an estimate.
And you just put the total cost of that?
Yep, of each one.
And how much is the body camera?
600.
And was there anything else in there?
Additional? No, I left the IT, actually the IT, I believe, was 15,000. I dropped it down to 12,000. That's the personnel that we use for, that's Anthony Adamo. We use him for managing all of our IT software, our tracks, which is our tickets, all of our laptops, all of our security, any issues. We've just almost got our cameras up and running again, and we just installed the software so that when the camera does go down, he'll receive emails and he'll be able to try and get it corrected immediately.
And that's 12,000?
That's 12,000 from 15. I think we hit 15,000 because we had the build of construction going on, and there's a lot of different things that were occurring that we had to get repaired and corrected.
You guys are routinely backing this information up, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, in different places. So, look at this to you. Sorry, it's small. He's basically, putting us on notice, I think. Nothing may happen, but basically letting us know that they've reached their prime. There is no page 2. Page 2 is basically another, just continuation of it.
Thanks.
The price for the, for line 400 for the contractual, I didn't include, I included copier supplies like toner and things like that, but I didn't include a lease, because I'm not sure, I couldn't find the records in the ledger for any leasing on it, so I'm not sure if the lease is, I'm not sure what the status of the
You
lease
mean
is.
it's not charged to your account now?
I didn't see it in there. I just seen, I definitely know that repairs are not. If we need a repair, we're paid by each repair. So there's no more coverage on it. Warranties, I'm assuming that.
more than we do have on some of the top that we can check.
Some of the high prices in that line item are maintenance, things that we have to do. We have to maintain, like our live scan, that's electronic fingerprinting, that's $2,319. I did accurate accounting, our ammo is required for annual in-service training. This year, I'm one of the training officers, and have them certified in night shooting. So they do for that. I am requesting a radar, which is $1,500. I believe pretty much everything else is what I requested in past budgets. Psychological screenings I have for 6 new hires. Drug screenings I have for 6 new hires. All part-time staff. Line 410 was fuel. I have it down at $20,000. That's $10,000 from the 2015-16 line. 420 police vehicle repairs, $19,000. That's down from $24,000 from the budget amount. Benefit of having a newer vehicle is a lot of the work that had to be done on our newer cars is still in warranty, so we wouldn't pay for any of those repairs. Police uniforms and vests, it's contractual, that's line item 430, it's $30,400. And police car washes I have, that's line item 440, I have at $1,100. The police contractual, 400. I believe for the 15-16 budget, this budget, projected to be under budget by $13,000.
And which one?
Line item 400, projected to be under by $13,000.
So, I don't show that.
For that particular line?
Yeah.
Sure.
But, so if you're gonna be under 13 and you wanna spend 12 on server,
Right.
and
Yeah.
why do we need to go up 10?
Body camera, we needed some additional first aid equipment as far as AEDs, pads, Narcan.
Is that 10,000?
No. I'm just looking, ammo's $14.95, the cell
But
phone.
that's normal, right?
Yeah.
We already do that every year, don't
The cell phone, the laptops, and the cameras in all the parks, $6,217.
we? Is there anything new in there that's going on?
I think that number is higher
Okay.
than last year.
It'd be good if you could break that down, if you could look at that and see if
I'd
it
have to
could
get
keep
the-
you closer to where you are if you're coming in 13 under and you want to spend 12.
That was 400?
Yeah. I had you coming in right on,
Oh, I just wanted to make sure this is the way I read it, I'll make sure I'm reading it correctly. So it's not for you.
is this the last one? This is the December one.
For, it has over here for the,
Yeah, I think you need to go off the latest ones, there's till the February one, but your January one, I'll see you going right on. But we'll flip that up. We'll switch.
there's several things on the agenda. I don't know if you want to do them now, or you want to wait till I'm done.
They won't want to know.
Why don't we just,
Oh, I don't know.
You got,
well, let me finish with, this one for Carl. Is there something I need to do before?
you have two here.
You need to nullify one appointment and then,
You have to nullify Mr. Nisi, and you have to approve the LaSalle.
Okay, so could we, have a motion to nullify Mr. Delisi?
No, if I, Nisi and yes,
And yes,
I'll make that motion.
and then to hire DLE so.
so, we made a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then the second motion, is there any discussion about hiring another part-timer?
Make a motion to hire DeLisi.
Okay, second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The court clerk is the last thing on the page, right?
Yeah. You want to do the court clerk?
Yeah.
Cindy Peragio, 20-hour court clerk.
Do we need to talk about that more? Is that something they want us to act on now?
They're going to start her next week, right?
Okay, so could we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So John, you're gonna go now?
I'm gonna go now.
Okay.
I'm gonna take it one. Yes.
John, you want?
Nice tie.
You would be televised tonight.
There you go. Thanks, John.
I didn't bring my hat down here. It says "Make America Great."
What's that one?
I didn't think that would be a good idea.
For the Trump hat?